This is the Entertainment Execution Lab Podcast, episode number 7. And today, let's talk about National Lampoon's Vacation. It was directed by comedic legend Harold Ramis. It was written by comedic legend John Hughes, who went on to, write and direct those string of teen movies that came out in the late 80s. The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Uncle Buck, just to name a few. It stars comedic legend Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Anthony Michael Hall, Dana Barron as the Griswolds, Randy Quaid, and an appearance by John Candy, just to name a few. And let's not forget Eugene Levy. The movie starts its comedic role even before they leave for the trip. Namely, when Clark goes to pick up his new car, it turns out that his car was swapped out for a, junkier car than he wanted. And when he tried to get his old car back, it came back as a giant metal cube after being crushed. And this certainly sets the stage for things to come in this comedic misadventure of the Griswolds as they go from Chicago to Wally World. I mean, anyone who's ever driven cross country knows how much of a pain in the ass it is when things go just fine. But it seems as though his family suffers incident after incident after incident, just all the way down the line. And when I say incidents, I mean very funny comedic incidences. It really is like a trip from hell, only with a punchline that just keeps getting delivered over and over and over again. They get their hubcaps stolen, they sleep drive, there's deaths along the way, including an old aunt and a dog who gets strapped to a bumper. And let's just say that after running about a quarter of a mile, the thing ended up becoming a piece of roadkill, splattered across the road for about a mile and a half or so before a cop pulls the car over. The Griswolds meet up with inbred family members, one of which is played by Randy Quaid. They lose all their money, deliver a funeral in the pouring rain at nighttime, eat pissed on sandwiches, they lose everything, money-wise, so they can't pay for the trip. Clark finds a red convertible driving supermodel-looking woman, played by Christy Brinkley, who he eventually meets up with, and they both have a skinny dipping session together. And through all the trials and tribulations of the trip, they finally make it to Wally World, only to have Wally World be closed. That's right. The exclamation point is, the park is closed. And what does Clark do? He goes to get a pellet gun, takes the guard hostage, the guard played by John Candy, and they have their own private session. The Griswolds and the security guard. They go on all the rides and have all the fun, only to be met up with an army of police officers who come to arrest them for, breaking and entering the park. The Griswolds somehow manage to escape some serious prison time. For the Griswolds, it was a hellish yet fun, funny, comedic trip down a holiday road. The song, provided by Lindsey Buckingham. This was a typical, funny, early on National Lampoon's movie. And one quick note before I move on, Anthony Michael Hall, who would go on to star in 3 John Hughes movies as geeks, nerds, and spazzes, did not play one in this film. He actually came off as a pretty cool character. Alright, so let's move on. Let's get to the aftermath. This instant classic was distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures, released on July 29, 1983, at a runtime of 98 minutes. The budget was $15 million, it took in $61.4 million. Was this a success? Yes, it was. It was later released on VHS, Betamax, Laserdisc, and CED. And eventually later on down the line in 1997 it was released on DVD. And eventually it was released on Blu-ray in 2013. It even got an A&E documentary treatment. This film has generally good reviews to it, and on Rotten Tomatoes it holds a 93% rating. It also has 3 sequels: European Vacation, Christmas Vacation, and Las Vegas Vacation. Only one of which, unfortunately, is actually worth watching. And that would be Christmas Vacation. The other 2 are kind of duds. Here's a fun fact. This film was shot in Utah, Missouri, California, Arizona, and Colorado, along with St. Louis. So it seems as though this film was shot entirely on location in 5 different states. Is this movie a classic? Yes, it is. In the end, Harold Ramis became a juggernaut in directing comedies. Chevy Chase was already a juggernaut, but he became an even bigger one with an acting in comedies. Well, at least until he went off the rails, especially doing that, what was it, talk show back in '93 that only had like 12 episodes and fucking sucked, destroying his career. Anthony Michael Hall became a member of the Brat Pack later on in the 80s, becoming a teen idol, I guess you could say. Beverly D'Angelo was consistent in her career. And well, John Candy was a fixture in comedies as well until he died in 1994. As I mentioned before, John Hughes became quite the director in the 1980s teen genre. He was also the mastermind behind Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which, if you compare that movie and this movie back to back, they're actually kind of similar. This movie was made back when movies were actually still being made good and comedies were still funny. In the end, I didn't bring Christmas Vacation 2 into the conversation with the sequels because, well, let's face it, that movie was really not a sequel, even though it was. And I didn't bring the remake into it either because, to be quite frank, that movie should not even exist. I don't even like to acknowledge that it does. That's how bad it was. They should have just called it National Lampoon's Vacation Cash Grab. It was pretty stupid and lame. This has been the National Lampoon's Vacation review. And until next time, don't go on vacation with the Griswolds. It might be funny, but let's face it, it'll be a major headache. Signing out. This has been the Entertainment Execution Lab Podcast.